Welcome, everyone. Peace be with you all. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us for the first in a series of 4 iftar meetups. Obviously, today is not. Today we don't have iftar. Today is not the first of Ramadan, but we're on the cusp of it. And welcome. Thank you for joining us on this auspicious time, as we are at the eve of the beginning of Ramadan. Our intention is to, though we cannot meet in person, we can still meet face to face, and we can and we should keep the discussion going to continue meeting and to continue exchanging ideas. With that, we'd like to, of course, create opportunities for dialogue and for the exchange of ideas, while keeping in mind one of the most important issues that we face in society is connected to the environment and sustainability. We've prepared a series of 4 wonderful speakers who will each in turn address a different aspect or a different approach to thinking about faith and to thinking about the environment and in relation to one another. And as we would if meeting each other in person, I would suggest that we all allow each other to finish our ideas. And what I mean by that is to keep your mic on mute until and when individuals are complete with their thought. I encourage and I strongly suggest that everyone think of ideas and thoughts and keep your questions or your thoughts or reactions in the question and answer box. And I'll draw your attention to, I think it says chat, at least on my laptop it says chat. So in that box you can record some of your thoughts, some of your reactions, and some of your responses. Our intention is to finish, to wrap up by about Maghrib, by about Azan time. And as we begin Ramadan, as our talks continue, we might extend into just a little bit after the Azan. So I request your patience. Please do bear with us as we work through the technical difficulties that may arise, and also do continue to follow us as we proceed through the program. Next week, inshallah, we will have Dr. Lutfi Ridwan from Willowbrook Organic Farm. After that, we will inshallah have Julian Kirby from Friends of the Earth, and then we will have Sister Rabia from Green Deen, the Rabbani Project, in each of which will respond to some aspect of Islamic ethics, sustainability, and the environment. I will now turn the mic to our operations manager at the Muslim Council of Britain, Lamisa IFEES.
Right, assalamu alaikum everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all, if virtually. I am the operations manager at the Muslim Council of Britain. Thank you very much to Muntasir, who is one of our amazing key volunteers at the MCB and has been working on this project and on our national listening exercise and on our Proudly Muslim and Black project. So I thank him very much for everything that he's been doing. I hope you can all hear me all right. I've come out onto my balcony today for this because it was such nice weather. And I think it's a perfect time to enjoy the greens since we're on Eco-Iftar. But just on the behalf of the MCB, really, I would like to welcome you to this series, which we're so keen to put together. The MCB has been doing work on green issues and trying to work with our affiliates and our partners for a couple of years now. And we're really keen that the Muslim community's initiatives and the work that they're doing in this area is highlighted. Last year, we had the opportunity to highlight a lot of mosques that went green or plastic free, or tried to go plastic free for Ramadan, and this year we're planning to do another initiative like that, but because of COVID-19 obviously we had to change our plans a little bit, and those plans have now become the Eco-Iftar series, which will be every week on a Thursday, and we really hope that you can take advantage of it. We want it to be an open conversation. We want you to share your thoughts and your questions as we go, and hopefully continue the conversation afterwards online, and in between. And maybe some of the conversations we have today or in between can add to the conversations in the coming weeks as well. So please stay engaged. The MCB has a number of other initiatives happening across Ramadan. Keep an eye on our social media. We want to make this an opportunity for people to enjoy Ramadan at home as much as they can. We might be in isolation, we might be in quarantine, we may not be able to take advantage of the community in the usual ways, but it gives us a real opportunity to enjoy our community in a different manner and connect with Allah in a different way as well. And we hope that everyone can take advantage of this time to engage with the many initiatives out there that our affiliates will also be sharing. And that's really it from me. I just want to thank again the volunteers who've managed to put this together. Bernardo is here, Manuel is here, Muntasir is here, Shahab is here. We're also joined just right now by Zara, who is our one of our exec members, and maybe she can just say a small word at the end, but I'll leave it at that and let Muntasir continue, inshallah, and let Mark speak.
You need to unmute, brother.
Thank you for that, Lamis. Thank you for your leadership. Let me quickly hand over to Mark Bryant. Mark is currently Director of IFEES, Eco-Islam, and is also the Development Officer for the Center for the Study of Islam in the UK at Cardiff University. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'd like to thank the Muslim Council of Britain for all the great work that it's been doing on this, and for turning around into a new situation. We were obviously talking previously about, events that were very much around mosques, etc., to do with the environment. And I think that the program that we've got in front of us is hopefully going to be really helpful for people and interesting for people, and thought-provoking. So I'm very honored to be able to speak on this platform. I'd like to start off by saying, that this is a very, very difficult, unprecedented time for everybody. On behalf of IFEES, Eco-Islam, I would like to extend, my sympathy and thoughts to those who are suffering at this time or have lost loved ones due to this terrible virus, and to the conditions that people are having to live in that are very challenging. So I wanted to pass our thoughts on to people like that. I hope tonight to be able to talk to you, to draw together a little bit what's coming later, about looking at our relationship with nature and our responsibility as stewards of the earth, and our lifestyle previously. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of gave a message to people of hope and a message of looking forward to a brighter future. And there's a lot of talk at the moment of not going back to as things were before, not going back to the normality that we had there. And I think it'll be really interesting to question what normality we want to go back to, what normality we want to create. And so I think that I would like to give a kind of positive message for people to think about all the good that we can drag out of the situation. And then I would also just like to apologize and to ask for your patience and forgiveness for any shortcomings with this talk. I've had quite short notice, but also I'm just not used to talking on this platform. And so I hope you'll forgive me if it doesn't come over too well. So we need to, I think it's interesting to think about, as Muslims, the opportunities that have been given to us. Now, I think we need to, it's interesting to look at the situation that we're in at the moment. Let's make no mistake, this is not a natural disaster that we're facing. This isn't an earthquake. This isn't a a meteor. This isn't floods, a tsunami. This is a man-made situation, and it really should be shocking us into thinking about our influence on our own lives and the lives of the planet. And so, you know, the basis of this virus is around the way that food production has been going on, and the way that we've lost our connection with nature, and we've lost our way with nature. So when you know, I hope you tune in and listen to Lufti, who's doing the next talk, because you know, he's going to be able to talk in more detail about that. But we're told in the Quran, in Surah Ar-Rahman, about the importance of the balance of nature and keeping the balance of nature. And so I think we really do need to reflect on how the situation that we're in at the moment is a consequence of human beings not staying with that balance of nature and going against the kind of natural balances that our Lord has put there for us. We as Muslims are also told that we are responsible for God's creation. Not just Muslims, you know, all human beings are responsible for God's creations, but we have a very specific message that's for us. And I've always said to people as an environmentalist, look, if you have to face your Lord and he asks, and you're asked, you know, how did you take care of that was given to you as your environment? And it's interesting to think about how one would have to answer that. So that's, you know, that's the situation that we're in. But what about, you know, how can we think positively to a future? And we're living in unprecedented times. As an environmentalist, it was quite interesting. Both Chris Packham, you know, who's been working with the environment for years, I heard him speaking to people at an XR talk in London, and also David Attenborough's kind of done this, you know, that people like himself and people like that have been, you know, doing this message for years and years and years, and saying, look, this is unsustainable, this is not going on. And then all of a sudden people have picked up the message, and the message was beginning to get picked up very well before the shutdown happened, that the situation that we're in is dire, and that the situation that we're in needs some radical changes. And there were two problems that faced most environmentalists since the 60s, 70s. One is trying to explain to people that we can make a significant difference to the earth, that we can actually affect it. For most people, through most of the history of environmentalism, it seemed too huge. It seemed too impossible to think about how that could happen, you know, how we could be making a change. So there was a lot of denial about that, you know, and it'll self-heal, and it's not a problem because it's endless. I was brought up in Africa, and you know, the generations before me thought that the herds of antelope, etc., were endless, and they hunted them to extinction, or nearly to extinction, because they just thought they were endless. So that's the one problem, is trying to get people to understand that there's a problem here, that human beings are actually making a difference to what's going on the planet. And secondly, the problem is to try and explain to people that the status quo, the way that we're living at the moment, can be changed, because it seems unchangeable. But the great gift that's been given to us with this present situation is that realization that, number one, we do make a difference. So there's going to be endless amounts of data coming out after this is done, to see how much difference we've made to the planet by not behaving in the way that we were before. And so already we're seeing locally in the UK air pollution numbers plummeting because people aren't driving and using transport as much, etc. So you know, we're already seeing the evidence that when we stop, we stop. There had been that before. I mean, there was an interesting thing, you know, during when all the flights were stopped after 9/11. It made a massive impact on the United States weather patterns. that was interesting. But now everyone's living this. Everyone's living and seeing that these changes are happening. And then the second gift that we've been given is the ability to now imagine a future that we couldn't imagine before. So before, I think about 2 years ago or a year ago, if I'd said to you, yeah, you know, I'm environmentalist and I think, you know, we just need to stop flying as much as we are. We need to drastically cut flying. And immediately everybody would come to you and say, oh, no, well, you can't do that because, you know, the economy and flights and it's important, it's impossible to change. And look how quickly we've seen endless amount of airplanes just grounded, the whole of EasyJet grounded. These were impossible thoughts before. The other argument that would have been put forward is no. It would, you know, the economy isn't, we can't do that economically. Well, we've done what we're doing and we're not, you know, we haven't all kind of, you know, turned up our toes and died. You know, we're surviving through this economically. And I know that it's really, really tough for people. I know it's going to get a lot tougher for people. But at least we can see that you know, the consumer pushed life, the Costa Coffee pushed life before, when people thought it was impossible to do anything about, they're all shut. They're all shut right now. And you couldn't have imagined that before. So this is a wonderful opportunity for Muslims to shut down and rethink. Now, I was talking to the folks earlier on, and I was saying to them, you know, as Muslims, we're in a really good position with this because, in fact, we're good at resetting, you know, or we should be in theory, because 5 times a day we have the opportunity to shut down, reset. The whole point about wudu is for us to be able to approach our Lord cleansed and fresh mind, etc., etc. There's actually, you know, there has been research done about, you know, the benefits of that for people in the workplace, coming back to work, having taken a break, and being kind of refreshed. So we have a 5 times a day kind of opportunity to reset ourselves. And then every year we have this holy month, this very special month in which we can reflect upon our behaviors as Muslims, the kind of things that we should be doing, the way that we should be looking at other people. And so we have a yearly opportunity to have this reset. So I think that what I would like people who are listening to this to be thinking about is ways in which that ability to reset, and now we've got this much bigger reset as well with the shutdown. You know, a lot of us have got opportunities to think of things in a different way and to think of things from a different perspective. And so what I'd like to do is, you know, inshallah, I won't be talking for too much longer, because what I'd like to do is I'd really like to get feedback from the people who are listening. And I'd like us to think about ways in which we can behave that is different to the ways that we behaved before, for a much kind of brighter future. You know, I mean, one of the things that I found very interesting is all the initiatives that have been done by people like the MCB here in Wales, the Muslim Council of Wales, the Bahu Trust, you know, all these different activities that are making for a different Ramadan. Okay, and I think it would be, you know, what we need to think about is, do we want to go rushing back to the way that things were before, or do we want to perhaps go back to a new future that we can have a lot more control over? Because I think the problem was that we were never really given a moment to think or to breathe within this very kind of fast-moving, so-called developing kind of consumerism driven culture that was based on an unsustainable financial system. Do we want to go back to that? Or have we now had the opportunity to have a breath and think and see, is there ways that we can live more sustainably? So for instance, one of the things I talked about when we did plastic-free iftars with the Bahu Trust and with IFEES last year in the Muslim Council of Wales was the amount of plastic that's produced in an iftar. The whole idea is to raise money for the poor. And yet, the poor, you know, we know that the world's poor are the ones that are least resilient to the effects of climate change. So you had a kind of ironic situation where you had a lot of really good-willed Muslims getting together to raise money for the poor, but in doing so, they were producing a huge amount of plastic, which in itself was going to detrimentally affect the very poor that they were trying to help. So we have this opportunity to rethink ideas like that. And our faith, you know, Islam is essentially environmental. I mean, one of the things I used to say a lot before this happened was, you know, we as Muslims have, you know, the only way that we can experience God is either through the Quran or through the example of his prophet, peace be upon him. But the other way is through that he created. Okay, everything around us, and let's not, you know, people who are living in urban environments, let's not think that environmentalism is about nature. Your environment is the people you're living around. We're all having opportunities now to spend time with families that we didn't before. We've got opportunity. We're having detrimental opportunities of not spending time with families that we did before. And this maybe makes us appreciate them more. So where we are right now is in a situation where that is all around us is our way of experiencing God. And so therefore, if we are not respectful of that, if we're not respectful of the nature that we live in, surely that is a problem, you know, because that's almost, you know, it's disrespectful to God. He produced this perfect environment for us, this perfectly balanced environment. And until we started to undo that balance, we lived in perfect harmony with this. And those cycles of sustainability are what our Lord has put there for us to have. And so I think it's now an opportunity for us to think about the lifestyles we lead, that we are able to change, you know, things. We're able to turn things on their head because we found out in the last couple of months that we can turn everything on its head. And I hope that empowers people to feel that they've got a future that they can make a difference in, and that we can start living closer to the ideal of a Muslim lifestyle, where we care about those around us and where we care about not only our families, but everybody, you know, our non-Muslim community, just the whole world, because we're on the same planet, right? Nobody, if all the Muslims in the world did the right thing by the environment, it's not going to save us. Okay, this is the one time. I mean, my own personal view is that we need to think about this as our final test, not COVID, but how we're going to deal with climate change and how we're going to live sustainably going forward. Because the only way we can do that, the science is telling us, common sense is telling us, we live in a global world where we understand each other in global terms for the first time. And if we don't start living, you know, understand that we have to live together and to work together, it's going to be very, very, you know, difficult for anybody to survive. And so maybe this is the test. Maybe this is the test for humankind to, for once in its life, for the first time ever, to behave like grown-ups and to not, you know, separate and divide and whatever. Because the only way we can save ourselves and see ourselves to the other end of this is by working together. So inshallah, you know, we as Muslims can lead on this because we have so many gifts that have been given to us as a faith. And, you know, inshallah, we'll be able to move forward. So I would like to take the opportunity now to, you know, to open this up and to see if anybody has any thoughts or any ideas, or would like to ask any questions about ways in which we can move forward to a brighter future at the end of this Ramadan and at the end of this shutdown. I thank you very much for listening.
Actually, perfect timing. I just wanted to intercede because I know people were asking about clapping for the NHS at 8.
Yeah, exactly.
I can hear it everywhere. So if anyone wants to pause for a second to do so, my balcony became very loud very suddenly. Please feel free to do so.
I thought, what's everybody doing downstairs? What are they doing? And then I realized. So I have my family doing it on my behalf.
Thank you,
Now I
Mark.
do.
Thank you, Mark. Would anyone like to ask a question? Bernardo, would you like to unmute?
Hello. Yeah, actually, I was clapping for the NHS, but I do have a question, yes, for Mark, and I would like to ask you, in which level do you feel this change really depends on governmental laws and governmental investment on green projects, and we are just a small part on this change, or am I seeing this wrong?
No, I mean, obviously, I don't think you're seeing it wrong. I think that I mean, thank you for your question, and thank you for clapping for the NHS. My wife works for the NHS, so thank you very much. Yeah, okay, so top down, bottom up thing. I mean, I think what's important to remember is that environmentalism, as we know it today, so Islam is intrinsically environmental, but Muslims are not, all right, and haven't been for a long time. And environmentalism as we see it today, we need to give credit to the secular West for this, and particularly hippies in California. And back in the day, the early hippies, you know, they all made loads of money and kind of, you know, but they wanted to go back to they wanted to be at their roots of their caring and stuff. So they're the ones that started the whole recycling idea in California. And that wasn't in place. And through civic action, they actually, you know, produced an environment now of recycling. So now you get a lot of people in, you know, places like the UK who feel that recycling is something that's pushed by the government and by their council, and, you know, they find it a pain and why do I have to do it? And they feel that it's pushed from above. But actually the incentive to do it was pushed from below. And so you know, obviously what we can see here is just the power that governments have to be able to make positive changes to help us all. So what our job, I feel, is as individuals is to work together. And don't forget, you know, Muslims 2.7, you know, billion people. We need to make sure that we change the attitude of governments to understand that the climate change disaster is just a slightly longer term, and only slightly, than the coronavirus. And so they've got a model now to work for. We've got a model now to know that if they're really up against it, they can actually do something. And so I think that should empower us. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. It's such a good example, and I would like to answer with another question. How do you, Mark, think the Muslim community should empower themselves in this green change? Is by joining other communities such as Extinction Rebellion, for example, in London, or by turning into green projects themselves? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. You may not guess it, but I wasn't born a Muslim, and so I came to Islam. And one of the things that I found really lovely about coming to Islam was the message that I got was that you need to be the very best, whatever you can be as a Muslim. So if you're a Christian, you need to be the very best Christian that you can be. And you know, if you know, whatever school of thought you come from, you need to be the best of whatever those there is. And I think that's a wonderful kind of attitude that we have as Muslims that we need to do. So, you know, my answer is, you know, Muslims need to, you know, turn to their faith and look at what their faith says. Because I'm telling you, you know, as somebody who was born not of this faith and who was of another faith, I can tell you, when it comes to an environmental ethic, there is no stronger religion in having an environmental ethic than Muslims. And so I'm you know, I would urge Muslims to go out and find the environmentalism within their Islam. Then once they've done that, because of what I said about, you know, we're all in this boat together, and you know, we all have to work together. then what you need to do is you need to bring your best Islam to whatever kind of way of working with other people you can. So, you know, for example, XR is a route. Okay, we've had a lot of discussions about difficulties for Muslims within the XR movement. I had a lovely conversation with some Muslims the other day, where, you know, we discussed that if I was to get arrested, the upbringing that I have and the color of my skin means that it's like a badge of honor. But to be non-white and to be a Muslim and to get arrested in this country has a lot of different, you know, connotations. So the way that Muslims approach that would need to come from their own point of view and their own strengths. But yes, I think very much we need to take that viewpoint that we have and share it with others, not in a kind of dawah kind of way, but more in a way of seeing what we can bring to the party. Because I'm telling you, as Muslims, we can bring a lot to that party. Because if we can get ourselves to start getting our heads around our own environmental ethic, then I think we can, you know, I've seen people in other areas, in permaculture meetings, I've seen Muslims just stop everybody and their jaws just drop when they look at the attitudes that we have towards certain things, like one another, for example. You need to unmute, brother.
Yeah, I keep doing that. A couple of interesting questions. And I see also a hand raised. I've seen a hand raised by Abdullah, and I see Saj Hamid has asked a question. Shall we start with Abdullah?
Yes. Hi. Thanks, Mark. It's really interesting, your talk so far. And one of the members of the audience about Muslims joining various environmental activities. I think that's a really good point. And I think one of the things is about because of globalization and so on, the effects of it on various communities, we, the whole world, including us Muslims, have forgotten to serve the local environment, the local communities, and therefore our lives have changed. And I think Mark's mentioned about, there was a reference to what would we go back to after coronavirus, and this idea of the reset, and perhaps having another look at around us, our own communities, whether we are in London or New York or Palestine or South Africa. Just look at what's around us and serve the environment, the people, the communities. Maybe that's one place where we can start from in the reset. Yeah. So just a comment, really. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your kind words. And I absolutely agree. And I've been working with folks from the Bahu Trust, and some of the local work they've been doing is amazing. And you know, one of the ways that you get young people to understand the importance of their environment is by getting them to start on a local level. Only after they do that can they start looking wider, because you need to show them that it makes a difference to them. So I couldn't praise enough about, you know, the efforts of doing things locally, and there's a lot of organizations who do that. I would just put one caveat, and I'd say we just need to, you know, I mean, I've been rather nice about us as Muslims, and I think we also need to be self-reflective and about, you know, ways in which we can improve, you know, the way that we approach things. And I was working with a colleague, and he got this group of young people together, a Muslim initiative, and he got a bunch of young people to come together to clear up the local area, including outside the mosque. But of course, the interesting thing was that these kids were all Christians, and he couldn't get any, the volunteers he got were Christians. And so, you know, we need to look as Muslims and see what, you know, why were our young people not the ones that were cleaning outside our mosque? Why did our mosque need cleaning up outside? That kind of thing, you know. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of scope for that.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really a good point. Yeah.
Good points. Interesting stuff. Saad, would you like to ask your question? Unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Alaikum salam.
Just to let you know, if I'm babysitting, so you'll hear children in the background.
Mashallah.
Yeah. Basically, so you touched upon the fact that how will we get back to, going back to norm, and will it ever be the same? So my point is around that. I mean, there's a side of me that's feeling very optimistic, and I believe we have overcome various pandemics previously, such as a Black Plague, which was horrific. There's places throughout the UK where pieces of land were used just to throw bodies together, because how horrific and how dangerous this was. So I know this country and other countries have seen through such major issues. But coming back to where things are right now, am I being too optimistic? What's everybody's view? What's your view? Are we being am I being far too optimistic, saying that we will get back to interacting again as a civilization? We need to interact with the humans. We need to be able to work alongside each other. Or do we feel that this will not happen now on the back of this pandemic?
Thank you very much. I'd like to emphasize this again. I mean, firstly, your motivation is behind you there. Your children are your motivation. It's what they're going to inherit from you. That's really what we need to look after. No, I don't think you're being too optimistic, because what I'm saying is that there's a lot to be pessimistic about. I said at the beginning, I'm so aware of just how people are suffering, and I'm so aware of how much suffering's coming further along, and the burden in the UK is much more on Muslims because of the importance of this month, and because of the importance of being together at this month and everything. So these are huge sacrifices, and it's dire, and we're listening to politicians who, let's face it, they don't know the answers, and you can see that in them, and they, they're doing the best they can, but you can see they don't know the answers. So there's enough. That's all there. So then you think, but what can we take out of it? And I think that the optimism that you're having now, you need to work with, and so we need to make sure that it doesn't go back to what it was before, because if it does, then all the suffering and death, etc., taught us nothing. So it's the optimistic viewpoint that you have needs to be actioned, so that we don't look back at this time and think, why didn't we do more? Why are we back to where we were? I'm very distressed. I don't know what the truth is about it, but I was concerned to hear that that the markets, with the wild animal markets have reopened again, and I think these are the kind of things we need to think about. This is not about blaming a particular group of people, but it's about we can't go back to the consumerism that we had before, because it was unsustainable. We can't go back to the amount of fossil fuel that we were using, or any fossil fuel. I mean, we just can't afford to go back to that, because this virus is immediate, but the danger for the environment afterwards is huge. And I mean, one of the things, I don't normally do statistics too much, but I mean, we're looking at the amount of people who have died from this virus and what we've done as humankind to action that. We've had countries shutting down. We've had airlines stopping. I'm not allowed to go back to work. These are absolutes, right? But the numbers of people who are dying are tiny compared to the amount of people that have died over the last 10 years because of air pollution around the world. And so you think to yourself, we need to reprioritize, and we need to say, look, we can't go back to, panicking about this, but not panicking about the fact that we were killing our children with the diesel fumes in this country that we're using, and so keep the optimism, I would say, but use it as an inspiration to work towards the future of those kids behind you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll continue with that. Cheers.
Thank you.
Great questions. interesting responses. I'd like to make sure that Sabah gets a chance. Sabah, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, Assalamualaikum. It's a really great initiative. Thank you for doing this. It was just an observation, really. I think because of this situation we're in, personally, I'm finding we're making compromises, having to use plastic bags when I wouldn't normally have done, and just seeing on the TV the huge amounts of PPE, which is, I know is completely necessary, but it's all in plastic. And you know, for the future, what can we do to make it not plastic? Because there must be huge amounts of waste, and I know it's completely necessary right now. So I'm not getting on my high horse, but I do feel that there are certain compromises we are having to make. I'm having to make. I can't go out and buy myself a bamboo toothbrush because I can't get out to where I need to get to get it.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
Yeah.
So you know, I feel guilty about it, but at the same time, I think, well, I'm not consuming other things. I'm not traveling by car so much. You know, I'm not doing other things as badly. So it's just really a kind of a, you know, I suppose we're having to compromise in certain ways, but can we do things better?
I think yes. I mean, I think the mental toll that this is taking on people is huge. I have discovered, for example, that I'm not very good at meetings with lots of different people on Zoom. I don't mean like this, but I mean like at work. And I find myself exhausted at the end of a meeting that before I wouldn't have even noticed, you know, if I'd been in the office with them. So I think, you know, as environmentalists and people who are concerned, I think you need to just be a bit kind of gentle with yourself and not, you know, and realize the limitations of what you can do, because essentially the environmental issue that we live in at the moment is systemic. And so whilst the individual differences that we make are important, it's much more important that we deal with the systemic problems we have, for example, the unsustainable financial model. So, you know, keep yourself strong. I would suggest keep yourself strong for that fight later, and realize, I mean, I think the fact that you're aware of the compromises that you're making is a step forward. We have so many Muslims that we're really battling, well, people around the country, that we're battling to get to understand that you understand the issues, that you've taken the first step. You're in the right bubble there. So that's great. I agree with you. I think as environmentalists, there is a tendency, one or two environmentalists that I've been around, to kind of carry on finger wagging and stuff at this point, and I find that really, really unhelpful. And saying and a kind of "I told you so" attitude, you know, and the situation right now is way too dire for that. So I think after this is finished, we need to look at the cost and the count. And so yes, we can look at all these wonderful statistics about how much we saved and how much fuel we used as a country, but we also need to look at the fact that we weren't prepared for this, and everyone knew that pandemics were, you know, what they were, and at the same time the solutions that we have to it are very detrimental to the environment. So we can look at the policymakers, you know, going forward and say, you know, why do we have to do it this way?
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mark and thank you all for your wonderful questions, to Abdullah, to Sabah, to Saj Hamid. Thank you for your comments. Manuel, that was a great question, and Bernardo. Let's continue the conversation on social media. Inshallah, we'll be putting this online, and so you'll be able to access it. And we'll be blogging. We'll be hopefully blogging and continuing the conversation in different ways. And certainly, again, next week at a similar time, we will accommodate, of course, you know, the days are getting longer and longer. So we will meet around the same time, give or take 5 minutes. I would like to say Ramadan Mubarak to everyone. Please make dua for us, make dua for yourselves and for each other. Peace, be safe, stay home, of course. And let's ask some questions. Let's use our Twitter and Facebook and Instagram to engage and keep thinking. And I think Sabah's question was just a perfect way to end an excellent talk. I hope, Mark, you're not too exhausted. I hope you have some energy.
I'm good. This wasn't bad because you weren't all talking.
Yes. We were all very, very, how do you say, respectful. Well done, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we should end here, and inshallah, we will pick up again in a week's time.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair, everyone.
Hafiz.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's,
Bye.